Got an 806 that needs wiring desperately. I don't know if you can see this, but the Farmall 806 LP, the wiring harness, you can buy them new from Brillman's, complete one, $863.75, and that's American money, so to me it's $1,200. So the decision's easy. I'm building my own. I am gonna deviate from the wiring harness a bit. And you see these connections, you see how the wires have been cut off and stuff right here? These connections are a source of trouble, these plug-ins. And when I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna eliminate them completely and just have them wired right in. You don't need these connections, you just need a little bit extra harness so you can pull out your dash, and that's all you need. You don't have to have these sources of trouble. And I'm going to eliminate that in my harness. I use the original color and size whenever I can. When you run your wires, I like to do the ones from the farthest away point first, which is the generator. It's the farthest point, so the armature of the generator uses, well, you could get by with using number 12 because this is a 20 amp generator. I'm using number 10 light blue wire, and that was original. So run this and run it along the original route. Okay, my blue wire goes to this terminal right here. It goes from, and I put it along the route it's gonna follow. It's a little bit loose, but loose is good. You don't want it too tight though. You don't want to be short. And there's a clip under here. It clips in the harness and then it goes over to the generator. The wire about a foot, give it about a foot extra, so you got extra, then snip it. That's the first wire cut. The field wire is exactly the same length. The yellow wire ends up at this field terminal right here at the top of the regulator. That's where the yellow wire ends up, so that's where I just need to make one the same length as the blue. If you want to route it through and cut it like I did with the blue, that's fine. If you want to run it along the blue and cut the same length, that's fine. Do whatever you want to do. I just got the end of a roll for yellow, and if the yellow, if it's a little longer than the blue, that's good enough, and then I just cut it off when I'm done when I hook things up, and then that way you got no waste. Okay, the next one is the ignition wire. It goes from, well, here's my wire clip where it goes in. It goes from the coil to the starter button. The international junction's on the starter button. Now, if this is a gas tractor, I would junction it off at the fuel gauge. But it's not. It's an LP tractor. And I don't have a fuel gauge, so the only place to do it is at the starter button. And that's how the older tractors are done, like 60 series and down. So that's how I'm going to do this one too. What I did was I followed the main harness that goes down here, and I'm going to branch it off just like original and come back down and around and up. It makes it longer, but there's several reasons you do it that way. And number one is having one junction point saves a whole bunch of, in the harness, saves a whole bunch of wires, just cut individual wires just going places, so you don't want to do that. You got to do it all in one spot. Here's the next wire, and this is kind of, diesel, you don't use this at all. Same with the ignition wire, of course. And on a gas, you don't always need them. It depends what kind of coil you have, but originally they all had this. And if you have a coil with a resistor, there's a wire that goes from the R terminal of your solenoid. It goes along here. It goes by the regulator in that harness, goes over the top into the front harness, and ends up at your coil. And what it does is when you start it, it bypasses the resistor. It gives you full power to your full 12 volts to your coil to assist starting. So there again, if you have the type of coil that's got a built-in resistor, you don't need this. But if it's got the external resistor, you can use it, and it's I just use the number 16 white wire, 14 white wire. It was originally a white wire, so that's what I'll use again. Either gray or white. I think the gray was the oil, and I'll do that next. So we'll cut this off a foot longer than it needs to be, and then we'll do the oil pressure one. I'm using a gray wire for this. It goes for your oil pressure sending unit. That's and it goes in the main harness once again, follows it along, and goes back up here. Let's see if I can see it. It's kind of roughly put in, it's loose. And they'll follow into this harness right here, and it goes to the oil pressure light. And I'm just using number 18 or 16 gauge gray wire for this. It don't need to be very heavy because just a tail light wire. 806 standard, and they have headlights in the grill on them, and the International 806. And the wire you need to include that in your front harness, and they use a 14 gauge purple wire originally. These since I'm working on a Farmall, I don't need to include that. So if you're doing a standard, keep that in mind. Best way to hold the wires together and protect them is to tape it. Then I loom it for looks. Loom isn't the best way, but it looks better, so I tape it and loom them both. So I put everything nice and neat and straight, as I always do, and I tape them and loom them. Okay, I got the end of the wires kind of where I want them. I want to actually have them out a bit more. I want to keep them away from the manifold as much as I can. I taped it pretty well where I want to join the rest of my harness onto it, so that's what I'll do. Now that my stub harness is built, I'm going to just incorporate it to the main harness. Right like that, and tape everything together. Okay, you see I'm building the harness beside the original. We'll be taking the original out entirely. And my harness is now completed to the dash. You don't need aesthetics inside the dash. It's all covered up, so I'll just straight tape it. But just the gray and the brown come off here, and a whole bunch are going in. Okay, we're back into the gray wire again for the oil pressure light. And the 806 has this. If you have 56, it's better, because, or 1206, because they have a separate light for the transmission. But on the 806, they don't, so everything's hooked to the same oil pressure light. So that goes down here, it goes to your dash, and it goes down in the next harness. And it comes around, follows, and goes down to your transmission sending unit. Okay, I'm introducing a small blue wire. Here's the big blue wire, and I'm introducing a small blue wire, 16 gauge. I can see it. It hooks to the same place on the regulator that the big blue wire hooks to, and it hooks from the gen terminal on the regulator to the tail light, the amp tail light. And that's how the tail light works. Is it's hooked onto your armature, your generator, and when your armature doesn't produce power, it draws power. And then when it produces power, it neutralizes the charge on the wire, and thus the light goes off. So that's how your amp light works on these. I'm gonna deviate from the original a bit. I'm gonna hook this twin wire up to the bat terminal on the regulator, and it'll go to the dash, and it'll, like originally there's a junction on the other dash, and you run a big wire there and then run two smaller ones back off the junction to feed your key switch and your fuse but since the key switch and the light are on the same side, I'll just run a twin wire, and they'll eliminate the need for a connection that way, and eliminate the need to run lots of wires. So I'll just use this wire here for that. Okay, the next wire is on the left side of the dash. It's the solenoid activation wire, and it goes down the back harness and goes around and comes back. This isn't a good depiction of it, but it's good enough to cut it. And it goes to the switch here. This is your activation, this is your safety switch for the solenoid. What I did is I made a loop and went back to the starter. Normally I do this in two separate wires, but you can see my switch is no good, so I'm gonna just put a loop in it for this time, and just leave the loop intact. And what that'll do is that'll eliminate a troublesome connection. Now cut lots of extra, so we got, because this is gonna take it. And this is your solenoid activation wire right here, which is normally 2 parts, but today we're gonna go 1 part. Okay, the next wire goes from the light switch, and it junctions under the platform for your headlights. And that's a purple wire. I normally use 14 for this, the right size, that's the original size. But I only got 12, so 12 will have to do. I got a cut off end here. I just gotta make sure it's long enough, but it's a black wire. It goes exactly the same place as the purple one does. And it is for the outside lights, like the headlights. When you go you go D and B, only the inside ones light up. When you turn it on R, then your backlight lights up, and these 2 outer ones light up. So those are working lights, and that's what this black wire is for. Thread wire, I'm gonna hook to the light switch, and it goes around the same as the rest of the light wires, and it'll come out right here for your back light, and this is for the red light. But also, this tractor's a 65, so it didn't have it to start with. 66 and newer ones had this, but I put a loop in the wire and junction it off for a flashing light. The flasher under the platform on the newer ones, the 60'6" and newer. And somebody already did add a light to it, so I'm gonna just I'm gonna hook that up and get set up for a flasher. Okay, now I gotta worry about the wires inside the dash. And this wire is the feeder from the fuse holder, which is in the other dash, to the light switch. So I got that's a 14 gauge green wire like it is on the others. Also need a feeder from the key switch to the starter button, or actually this junction here is what they were originally. I'm gonna go with brown, just like the ignition wire, because it hooks together with the ignition wire. Then the last wire will be your instrument light wire for the right side, and they'll be yellow because that's the only color that I got in the harness that doesn't go in the dash really, so that's what I use. Okay, now I'm gonna put the new wires into the harness from each side. Now to start with, the right harness is going to have only 1 come off, and there's going to be 8 wires in all in the right hand harness. So we'll I'll start incorporating the wires into a harness right now, and then we'll do the left hand, then we'll go further back, then we'll continue with the main to the back. Okay, I pulled this dash out. And I put the 4 wires that go in the main harness across here, and I hooked them up I put them to where they all end up in the root. There's plenty of extra. You could you could take the tack cable off and just flip this side down. It gives you lots of extras. Those 3 to these 4, or those 4 to these 4, because the one that's in the harness plus the three that go from the other side, that cross over from the other side, And the left side harness shall also be 8 wires. Now I'll make the left side harness just like I did the right side. Okay, now I got the left side, the right side, and the front main harness all combined. Now I gotta do the back one, and there's 11 wires here. 3 from the front, 2 from, and 4 from each side. So I'll tape it up and we'll go down to the regulator. Yeah, I add one more wire, and that's your main wire that feeds everything. That goes from the starter directly to the voltage regulator. It doesn't, since you got a tail light, we don't need to go through an ammeter, so it just hooks directly. Okay, I got a new key switch. I got the wire up to the right dash, and I got a new key switch in and a new fuse holder, so now I'll hook that up. My double feeder that I feed from the bottom, I hooked one of the wires to the key switch and the other one to the fuse holder, and that's what feeds everything in the dash. Okay, a green wire that feeds the light switch off the fuse holder's hooked up. Okay, on the oil pressure side, I got the 2 gray wires from the oil pressure switch hooked to the oil pressure light. On the amp side, I got the blue wire from the armature side of the regulator to the amp light, and then this is the dash light, and it's all hooked up. Now I gotta hook a feeder. Normally these hook up to the fuel gauge, and I don't have one, so I gotta make something like what it had. Here's the original for the tail light, so I hooked it up together on this one plug-in terminal, and I'll plug them in. I just used the original connections to feed it. That I put the brown that goes to the starter button in together with this black that feeds the tail lights. And there's the power beyond. They add this for priming it, and it's not proper, but so I just read this off, and the switch is buggered anyway, so I just read that off for now. So this side of the dash is hooked up and finished. Okay, now the left-hand dash. This is a junction block, and you see it was all broken off. It had 3 spots here, and the ignition wire was originally junctioned there, but I'll junction it at the starter button like the older tractors, like a 560 or something like that do. And that'll be perfectly fine. I don't know if you can see this or not, but it says INST on that one. They hooked the 2 wires together in one terminal. This is for the dash, for this black wire will light up the tach, and the yellow will light up the temperature gauge. The wire I hooked up was the main feeder, the green wire. These light switches are a little bit light, and I can't guarantee it'll work. I may have to change the light switch, but the next wire, this, I think it says TL. Now, yeah, I'm pretty sure it does. The other one says RL, so that's what that's gotta be. And this one across would be the headlights, and this headlight one goes, what it does on the first setting is dim. And what it does is your instrument lights are lit up on all 3 settings. So what it does is, this is not powered here on dim, but this one is, and it goes through the resistor and lights your headlights. And then when you go to bright and rear light, then it will then this terminal is energized fully, and it doesn't go through the resistor anymore. The terminals are pretty rusty, so I cleaned them with a point file before hooking them up. The TL is hooked to the red wire, and this one across from the instrument is your headlights. The purple wire's there, and the RL is the black one. So hook that up, and then the dash is done. Okay, on the regulator, and the first one I hooked up was the field wire that goes from the field of the generator to the F terminal on the regulator. Okay, the next wires I did were the blues, which are the field wires. The one's from the generator, and the one goes to the amp light. Finally, the bat terminals are hooked up now with the two wires there, the feeders to the dash and the main off the starter. Okay, the red wire goes off the main terminal on the battery, on the solenoid, and the battery feeds it. That's your main feeder wire. The orange wire goes to the S terminal on the solenoid, and it's your trigger wire that hooks the starter button. The white wire hooks to the R terminal on the solenoid, and it goes to the coil. Okay, lastly, in the middle section of the tractor, this gray wire, I put it in loom to protect it more. It's your oil pressure light wire for your transmission. And let's see, it hooks right, it plugs in right in there. Just like that. Okay, the brown wire, which comes from the key switch or the starter button is where it's junctioned off, is hooked into this resistor. And there's a little wire going out to the coil. And then the white wire from the R terminal on the starter hooks directly to the coil to give her a little extra shot of juice when you're starting it. Yeah, I hooked up the gray wire, the other gray wire to the this oil pressure switch for the engine oil pressure. The generator hooked up, the blue wire goes to the A terminal and the yellow to the F terminal, so that's all done. It's wired so it'll run right, it'll start and run right now. Okay, here was the original wiring for the fenders. They plugged in is what they did. They did that so you could easily remove the fenders. Now this wire was added, it's a piece of extension cord material, and everything was grounded on this bolt on both lights. But you see, this ground was added because this ground didn't do it. The tractors get older, they don't ground properly, so I gotta do something different. And I've got to put a third wire cord in that joins up to the other one. I'll put an external ground on the frame of the tractor somewhere. Here's the wire across the other side, and I'm just using a piece of extension cord material, 3/14, so I've got to cut this off. And I got to join another one to it. And this is the main splice point from left to right. So on each fender, this is one wire goes to each fender sort of thing. Now I have to use a yellow butt connector to hook the two together on one end. It's a 16 and a 14, and then I'll hook the single on the other end, and I'll do the same with the green. Okay, the wires are hooked up for both sides. The purple I hooked to another purple, and the green in the 3-wire cable, and then I put the blacks all together. I'm ready to tape this up and start making a harness for the left side. The right side would be the wiring's there now, but the left side I've got to build the harness because there's extra wires for the lights on the left light fender, so that's why that's done that way. On a standard, of course, there's no lights on the fenders, no headlights on the fenders, and all the rear light and the safety light, your flasher, is on the left fender, the rear light and that one. And there's absolutely nothing on the right side for lights, so you don't need to do fancy splices under the platform on these. Okay, I put a loop in the red wire, and I left orange. I added an orange wire, and that orange wire is for the flashing light. And that red wire feeds the flasher. It'll be teed up there, and it feeds the flasher. And when the light's on, when the back light, there's an extra bulb in there, it turns the light red. Rear light is a tail light, and then the flasher is hooked to that, and that's how that works on these. I don't have a flasher right now, but I'll wire it for one because there is a flashing light on the fender. Okay, now that the wiring's up here, I'll explain something. I loop this back, and this will go beyond to the back light, but it hooks to this outside light. When your light switches on R, it doesn't only turn the back light on, but your two working outside lights. Okay, I put an additional ground also to the back, and it hooks on here. I'm putting a supplemental grounds on because the original obviously wasn't enough. They wouldn't have tried to ground it again if it was. Okay, all of my harnesses are done now. This is for the headlights, this one. There's a pipe under the fender on this particular 806. Not sure if that's original, but since this one has it, I put the harness through that and then went to through the fender and up where it used to go, and then this goes under for the flasher. So this obviously did have a flasher because it's the clips on the fender prove it. Okay, I did some of the wiring on this side. I hooked this is the feeder wire to the light, and I had to splice it because these are doubles and they go back to the light, to the back light too. So the grounds, this is the ground from where I'm going to ground it, and the grounds are hooked up to here, and it also goes to the back light, and these are the grounds off of the headlights, and I'll put them together on this one screw. Okay, here's the purple wire right here. I gotta tie a knot in it. Originally this wire just connected to it, but I didn't see a point of having the connection. I just, since the purple is not junctioned off up here, and it goes to this left light only, I just run it to it directly and it saves the connection. There again, I didn't see any point whatsoever to having splices, so I took one of the original wires out. And I put an I terminal out because they had plug-in terminals on these silly things, and it just hooked to the, it was just hooked to this bolt screw anyways, and then the ground is from below is on it. And this is your black light wire, so it's outside light, and the green one, which hooks the purple, is the inside. So tie these up, put spades on these two, and put lights back in. That's got the headlights wired up. Okay, I hooked up the flasher because this is actually a signal light, tail light sort of thing. It's got two contacts, a black and a red. It'd have an 1157 bulb, so I lit up both sides on it. If I had a flasher, I'd have this thing working. I grounded the headlights to this bolt right here. Other than hooking up the back light, it's ready to go. The light has 3 terminals on it, and I just put 3 female plug-in spades on it. Okay, I got the wiring is all completely done, other than the back light, so we'll try it. So first step on the light switch is dim. The inside light on both sides are dim. Next setting's bright. Both lights are bright. This should light up both of the outside lights. It lights up that one. This one though, it's probably burnt out. I'll have to change the light bulb in it. And then so that on our those inside ones come out on. Okay. See what this thing does. See what she says. Turn the key on. Gotta turn the liquid on. My oil and amp lights work. I didn't have a 257 for the oil, so I just used that. There she goes. Both my lights are out. The oil pressure switch must not be working on the transmission. I should turn the oil pressure light on. Everything's working. So I don't think my dash lights are working, though. It might be my switch.